The hope of Elbaf now lies in the hands of Luffy's group, but there's a few things Luffy himself needs to know before running headfirst into this conflict, and some things us readers need to be filled in on about how Elbaf and Loki reached this point of such desperation.
And there's plenty of subtle details littered throughout, so we really do have a lot to cover in One Piece chapter 1152, so we'll get right into it, starting with the cover series.
And seems like the accelerated pace at which Yamato's kind of jumping from task to task now that she's returned the sword, defeated Who's Who, is really continuing to pick up. Like, we were complaining at first that this was taking a long time to just get into the headquarters.
Yeah, now that we've reached the top, we've already reached the peak, now we're going downhill. Let's just quickly resolute him. It's going to be over pretty soon.
That's kind of how I'm feeling. Once she sees all the regions, we're probably done.
Yeah.
So let's instead look at the chapter title being An Awful Day, which could very easily be interpreted as the nightmare that's literally ongoing on the island today.
Honestly, you would think so on first impression.
But we do learn that Elbaf has had plenty of awful days, and that this is just kind of up there amongst the top 5, probably.
Yeah, and so it actually refers to something that they're recollecting that has already happened, a horrible day from the past. But we do open this chapter during the current awful day, where we see the new giant warriors rushing to get back to the lift and return to the Sun Realm to help everyone and try to reduce the casualties.
Yeah, and it's all hands that they can gather, pretty much only leaving the doctors behind with Gerd and Chopper to look after Gaban and Loki. But everyone else, they seem like they gotta get going, otherwise they don't have a chance.
Yeah, and as Luffy's getting ready to leave, Scopper does get his attention, telling him to be mindful of just how he uses his Conqueror's Haki, and that he can bypass the Holy Knight's supposed immortality, that they're not actually immortal.
Yeah, just immediately dismisses that, so demonstrating that he also has some more insight about the God's Knights and all of them, but also confirming a previous suspicion we had on the channel that this was likely just going to be another upgrade to Luffy's Haki, so nailed that one kind of right on the head for this one.
Absolutely. And his words obviously inspire Luffy. He tells him, you know, I'm going to rescue your son and the rest of the children no matter what. But it also seems to kind of spark something in Loki. You know, he kind of thinks about it like, those words just kind of made it click for me. My own power. I need to go help. I need to help defend the land of Elbaf. And kind of begs his brother, like, you need to free me. Let me come with.
Mm-hmm. And if you come at this from Hajrudin's side of things, you're understandably not going to want to listen to your brother.
Yeah, who murdered your father, as far as you know.
But, again, like, Gaban being the voice of reason cuts through saying, you're not the only one that needs to focus on controlling their power to its utmost ability, as he demonstrates that he's very Haki sensitive again, and even calls out directly that there's another member of Luffy's crew that's not taking advantage of their own sense of Haki power.
Yeah, and this kind of felt a little bit like Oda just trolling the agenda piece world, but immediately Sanji's like, oh, it's gotta be me. I was worried. I was starting to fall behind Zoro and Jinbei. This is my way of regaining my number 2 status. And, you know, he seems very excited, but Gaban's just like, no. You, swordsman, you have it. It's clear. You need to start focusing on it and becoming more accustomed to how to use it.
And Zoro might just be stupid.
Yeah, I mean, we've been new, but like, yeah, come on. I have Conqueror's Haki, and then when Luffy can see something that you don't see, yeah, you're a little dumb.
But, I mean, King told it to his face. He's like, oh, you have kingly ambitions? He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I just want to be king of the swordsmen.
Yeah, I just want to be the best in the world at something. I have no idea what you're talking about, but...
Well, and then Gaban just, like, basically scolds him, like, you fool. If you really want to protect your captain to the greatest of your abilities and have his back, you need to be honing your powers. You need to be focusing and developing this properly. And he's like, oh, my bad.
Yeah, no. So we are probably going to see Zoro actually training to use his Conqueror's Haki.
Which could get real cool if he's just been doing it accidentally to this point.
Yeah, so maybe we'll even see him and Luffy doing like a training session together as he's like trying to teach him how to control it, which would be kind of cool.
That'd be cool.
But Sanji is properly kind of pissed at the situation where he's like, don't you dare ignore me again. I'm not going to be like shuffled down the totem pole.
I'm still a wing of the Pirate King. Like, you use me too. I can help just as much. But that kind of more petty squabble gets pretty abruptly interrupted by a much more serious one going on between Hajrudin and Loki.
Yeah, I mean, Loki wants to fight for his home. He wants to be of use, like he was saying before, to Gaban and them. But Hajrudin has no trust. He clearly hasn't had a chance to talk with his brother all that often about anything, and all he knows is the same rumors that are going around the island for these years ever since this incident occurred.
Well, and then hearing him say, like, you're gonna let these outsiders save our homeland, like, understandably, that ticks him off. Like, that gets under his skin of, like, oh, our homeland? The one that you turned on? The one that you betrayed already? How do I know you wouldn't just do it again?
Yeah. But luckily for Hajrudin, he's also got more than himself to focus on. He has friends who have backed him here as well. And Stanson does try to refocus him to say, hey, now's not the time to fight with your brother. Yeah, we need to get going.
We've already lost people. We need to get down there before we lose more. And then here comes Luffy just trying to solve things the way that he knows best, which is, oh, why don't you just join my crew?
Yeah. It's the simplest and fastest solution in his mind. And when you look at things with Luffy's sense of logic, it does make sense.
Yeah. Well, you say that you're following me, so you can't complain if I free a member of my crew, right, Hajrudin? And then also the thought of if he tries to act up, I'll just beat him up.
Yeah, that is the basis of a lot of Luffy's sense of confidence. If things go wrong, and my gut is wrong, which it rarely is, I can just beat him up. So, it won't be a problem. Which I think gets under Loki's skin more than anything Hajrudin has said so far.
Yeah, I mean, Zoro and Sanji try to also just be like, yo, we can't fit him on the ship, we can't feed him, he eats even more than you. But yeah, if anyone's annoyed by it the most, it's Loki being like, I would never follow someone like you. Like, he's nothing compared to what Rox is as far as intimidation. He's not someone that Loki would want to be considered underneath.
But again, they really don't have a lot of time to debate about this whole situation, as they once again remind them, hey, this is really urgent, we need to get going. And Hajrudin kind of attempts to just take this situation into his hand and not even let them have the decision by just grabbing Luffy and running off.
Scoops him up, it's like, hey man, can't do it, we're heading out.
But as he's about to run off again, it's literally Gaban each and every time that I know you want to leave, but you need to know something.
Yeah,
I know you want to leave, but you need him to come with you. And he, to the surprise of every other giant there, tells them to release Loki.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like it's at this point starting to hurt him to even speak. But he's like, Hajrudin, you gotta let him go. And again, Hajrudin is like, do you not realize what you're asking me to do? This guy killed 113 members of the guard. He almost killed Jarul. He killed my father. You want me to release that onto our land again?
Yeah, and all of the giants don't take that well. I mean, you usually see Goldberg smiling.
And you know that they respect Gaban more than any other human. So, yeah, what he's asking is kind of a cardinal offense. Something that all the respect in the world, they're not going to be okay with him just saying this needs to happen.
But Gaban does reveal that there's probably more to the story than they think, and that even on that day, he had felt a weird sense of hockey coming from West Castle, very similar to the same Conqueror's hockey that just reached the realm of the dead last chapter.
Yeah, and that he felt when they first arrived, that he felt when the Knights started attacking. He realized oh, there might have been more, and then he reveals to them also, he and Shanks, after he felt that surge of hockey, they went to the castle to investigate.
Mm-hmm. And hearing that, I think that they did sense something else was off that day. Maybe there was something everybody else missed. Does kind of give Hajrudin enough of that respect to Gaban to say, okay,
I'll at least hear it out.
Yeah, I need to hear a little bit more before I'm convinced, but you have my attention.
Yeah, and then Luffy, obviously, is just excited at the mention of Shanks' name. And so both of them are like, hey, you guys go on, we'll catch up, but we need to hear more about this.
Mm-hmm. Zoro does kind of poke fun at him, where he's like, this damn Shanks obsession.
Yeah, it's so annoying.
I've been hearing about him for years now.
Yeah, he's like, don't you dare say that about Shanks. He's like, he's saying it about you, dude. You need to get over this. There's bigger things going on right now.
And I think also, Gaban's words mean a lot to Loki in particular, because he has not had somebody stand up for him in probably those whole 14 years. Even Mosa's just like a friend, but nobody would stand up for him this directly.
Yeah, and he's going out of his way. He was about to get left behind. He's like, no, you need to give him a chance here.
Yeah.
And then he continues being like, look, if anyone's going to get him to talk and share this, like, secret, it's going to be you, his brother. You might have different moms. You're still from the same father and family.
Mm-hmm. Hajrudin is still filled with a lot of rage, understandably so, and, like, even him being compliant and giving him a chance, he's so angry that he's like, you need to swear to the gods. I'm giving you 3 minutes tops.
You call yourself a real warrior, prove it.
Yeah, he's calling him out, and he's really kind of, like, firing him up. But Loki, for once, doesn't respond with, like, a return sense of aggression, and instead, like, actually kind of recoils to about that how hard that day was, calling it cruel, and that
he has to relive it.
Yeah, it's a traumatic experience. And at the thought of that, as he's starting to lean back to think about it, we are transported to that day 14 years ago at West Castle, where Ja Rule is arriving, and Loki pretty much power squats and jumps his way into frame and lands right next to the path. Which I hope to God that's how they get up to the Sun Realm from here.
That would be so funny. Just comically, whoop, up to the top.
Just grabs Hajrudin and Luffy and flies.
I'd be here for it.
That's, I can dream. But these two massive men do enter the castle, and I mean massive, because the rest of these guys are giants, but they're towering over them. And they're spouting on about disdain for Loki, talking about, oh, my dad's a sellout. He turned on the same people that killed Rocks, and
he's working with the government now?
Yeah. He pretty much killed his childhood hero, which is gonna make anybody pissed at their dad.
Yeah, like, I get it. You wanted to follow this guy. And it kind of goes against what the Giant Warriors have always stood for, too, siding with the government.
But Ja Rule is very quick to dismiss any sense of political discourse, and says he's like, oh...
That's a young man's game.
Yeah, politics is a young man's game, which seems kind of like...
Hear that shit, America?
Yeah, like a jab by Oda at a lot of world governments, who are often controlled by those of an elder demographic. However, that sense of lack of accountability for the direction in which Elbaf is heading in really does seem to get Loki fired up about that kind of attitude is why this nation's getting weaker. That's why the kids don't know how to fight. And that's your, like, dismissal of that responsibility is part of the problem. But they don't have a chance to, like, they just keep kind of picking on each other.
Yeah, I mean, Ja Rule just keeps trying to be like, man, just stop it. Like, you're being too loud, you're being too reckless about it, and Loki just keeps going at it. But then they do hear sounds coming from the throne room that finally distracts them from this. And the guards are like, hey, you need to wait. Loki just goes right in.
No, he kicks...
He's like, this is my home, I do what I want.
He kicks the dude at the door through the door. Like, he is in between his foot and the door.
Which, as we'll see later, kind of taken from his dad on that one.
Yeah, no, definitely kind of runs in the family. And before he has his usual brash greeting with his dad, where he's like, old man, I'm home, he is cut off to a, quite a shocking scene. As we cut to the very next page, and his dad is being skewered by, like, 20 dudes all at once. Which... of course, looks like an assassination attempt. Like, this is very Julius Caesar-esque, getting stabbed by, like, the statesman multiple times over. And Ja Rule and Loki are they just walked in. They just got here.
Yeah, into just absolute mayhem. And their father/ruler, it would appear like an assassination attempt.
But before we can see more from this scene, because we will return... we are transported somewhere else that same day, and we go to actually see Gaban's house, which is sick, built onto the side of a mountain, and we see two former Roger pirates reconnecting and discussing, like he said, the fact that those two were together that day. We see Shanks visiting an old friend.
Yeah, and they're kind of just, like, reminiscing on all the things they've been through, but then also just what life could have been if maybe they'd done a few things differently. And it kind of seems like Shanks is yearning for a simpler life. Like, if he could have it differently, maybe he wouldn't be this pirate going across the entire nations. He'd live more of, like, a laid-back, chill existence, kind of like Gaban is now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe he's a little jealous of what he's got.
Probably. I mean, Gaban does say he's like, you were a child of destiny. I think he obviously thought he was going to follow in Roger's footsteps, and then that just didn't happen. But before they can like dwell on these really emotionally charged discussion, Gaban does kind of try and turn the conversation to be a bit more lighthearted memory of like, oh, remember when we went to Little Garden and met Dory and Broggy? Like, wasn't that cool when we got to see those guys fighting? But before we move away from this discussion, I think it would be foolish for us to not turn a little bit more attention to a very small visual detail on Shanks' left arm in the middle panel.
I didn't even catch this on my first read-through. Granted, I was kind of just quickly reading through it, but yeah, this is actually a pretty big detail once you notice it, is he's got that same mark that all of the knights do.
Mm-hmm. They have him on their armband. We saw the tattoo on Sommers when he was transported to Elbaf. But Shanks has a very similar looking symbol, which I believe is actually a very common symbol in some black magic guides and things like that. So also very in line with the magic that Emu has displayed so far.
And seems to have given all of these chosen, families and representatives.
Mm-hmm. It's like a demon's contract, or sort of, with each of these people. But, as you will remember, that is also the very arm that Shanks lost, quote-unquote lost, when he saved Luffy.
Which has always been something that people look at, like, how did he let that happen as supposedly one of the greatest future sight hockey users in the verse? Like, you couldn't see that you just move your arm out of the way a little when you're saving this kid? It could have all been purposeful and part of that destiny that he ended up having to chase.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people have speculated it was to inspire Luffy, but if it also severed the link between Emu and Shanks,
meanings,
and frees him a bit, that's also a dual purposed action for something that seems kind of foolish at first.
However, returning back to the chapter itself, the two, being Shanks and Gaban, are interrupted suddenly by Ripley, who, even as she's caring for young Colin, is still being a very generous host, offering food and drink, while also fishing for some juicy stories about her husband's past.
And Shanks, being the smartass that he is,
loved this.
does start to jaw off about something he probably shouldn't be saying in front of Gaban's wife, but Gaban is quick to act.
We all know where that was going, Mr. Minister of Love.
Yes, but we do have a brief time skip from that sort of funny interaction, and they do turn their focus back to more serious matters, as Shanks questions if Gaban knows anything about the king and pretty much pseudo-godlike figure of this land, King Harald.
Yeah, and he very interestingly said that he spoke briefly with him in Marijois, of all places, which it was said that he returned there once, so it would have been during this one time returning to his homeland.
Yeah, very odd that the timing of that would line up as it did, but...
And, I mean, he said that they couldn't speak freely while they were there.
Mm-hmm. So, there was clearly something he wanted to tell him, and the way he says it, I need to talk to him soon, it makes it sound like Shanks is well aware that if Harald had backed out of a deal with the world government or something like that, his life was in danger very soon. But he was also unaware that they would not even get the chance. As this conversation was essentially happening, we also see that same hockey blast pouring out of West Castle as what looked like it was an assassination attempt has become a slaughter completely turned the other direction.
Yeah, and obviously we don't get to see any specifics, but you see the horror in Guard's face, you see Ja Rule gets the sword through his head, and then it seems like Loki, we assumed that he killed his dad to attain the power that his dad already had. But what it actually looks like in this panel is that they just had it locked away. No one currently had the power. They were just guarding the fruit. And amidst all of this chaos, he went and retrieved it. As if this is the only way to defend Elbaf and keep what appears to be Domo Reversi King Harald from just slaughtering everyone.
Yeah. I mean, he mentioned he fought them before, and this, like you said, he probably saw was the only hope was this family heirloom that was so precious that none of these giants who love violence, who love war, or anything like that, they still didn't break it out.
They had it under lock and key.
This is going to be a nuts devil.
Yeah, we need to see him fight. I'm right with Luffy on that one. Can't wait.
Oh, it's gonna be so sick. I can't wait to see the creative idea that Oda has for it. But because of this, we can see why this isn't a very fond memory for Loki. This was traumatic entirely. And what we can tell is that it also does kind of clear his name of the slaughter of his father.
And it makes sense why he would also take the rap and hold it for that long. Is his dad was so renowned, like beloved among all the giant people. And this would have just completely tarnished his name, ruined his entire legacy.
Mm-hmm. So, again, Oda's writing never as straightforward as it initially seems. It's almost always that the evil person is a bit more complex than they think. But that does bring us to learning a bit about Loki's father and what kind of person he really was as we turn to the final page. And we're taken even further back in time. A flashback within a flashback.
Yeah, 109 years before the current day to the reign of the original Giant Warrior Pirates. We see a young Dorian Broggy and then get a glimpse of the real terror that they reaped on the world. The reason for their notoriety.
Yeah, and a big reason for that is we see at first just the face as he's like tricking one of his crewmates.
Oh, here, there's a beautiful princess in that tower over there.
Yeah, you should go ahead and look right in that window right there. And again, we see where Loki gets it from as he just kicks him into the
guy takes a
castle.
peek in and then, oops, I slipped. What a dick.
Yeah, he's this seems to be a very different version of the man that we saw speaking to young Hajrudin and Loki.
Yeah, and the one that allegedly was all about peace and, going away from war. They said he was a scummy person.
Yeah. He did take over a crown at a young age, of like what a child king would be like, and those
45, the equivalent of 15 to humans. Yeah, that is very young to be given all of that responsibility and power.
Oh yeah, child monarchs in real history rarely turned out good or safe for anybody, so it's not too far off that he would be a piece of shit.
Yeah.
But that also means that there's been a lot of development from this time to the point in which he was turning against Emu. In chapter 1153, before we can learn more about Loki's awful day that changed the course of his life, we must first learn about how Loki even came to be in the One Piece world.
And to do that, we have to learn first about his parents, specifically his father and the last king of Elbaf, King Harald.
But before we do learn more about the scummy king of the giants, let's briefly check in on Yamato's journey throughout Wano, in another installment of the cover series.
And as we noted earlier, Yamato is basically just really quickly covering ground at an insane pace at this point, seeing another scabbard and former Yakuza boss in Kiku and Cho.
And I'm kind of becoming more convinced in what was more of a funny headcanon that they did say that you can't linger too long on Elbaf, and people have speculated about time dilation. Maybe the pace picking up in this cover series really is reflective of the longer we're here, the more time is passing outside.
And I'm still a little skeptical on that. I think it's just because her main objective is over. They're just kind of showing flashes, but it could be.
Yeah, we'll have to learn more about it. But let's look at this chapter's title, being The Birth of Loki. And it's a pretty straightforward name, but in all honesty, it is kind of misleading because a lot of the chapter is just kind of the build-up to that point.
Yeah, it really doesn't come till the end that we even get the actual birth of Loki, although it is a very central point and clearly sets up the coming chapters.
Yeah, it's definitely the most important point, but we will get there, and rather than starting as a baby, we instead start this chapter with Harald as just a child, a very young child, along with some very pint-sized versions of Dory and Broggy. It's just kind of cute to see them in this form after we met them being like some of the largest creatures.
They've always been huge, they've always been towering over everyone, and yeah, seeing them as little pipsqueaks is just kind of a fun, different, like a good switch up.
Yeah, and while Dory and Broggy have always been smiley, happy guys, they didn't inherit as much as Harald. He was given pretty much anything he could have wanted just from being born into this world. And as a result of that, it seems like he became incredibly arrogant as we jump immediately into what is like his teen younger years. And he's very arrogant, very close-minded, and he's like...
everyone's weak, everyone's lame, like, no one fights like we do. Anyone outside of Elbaf sucks, basically, is how he saw it.
Yeah, it is kind of a teen mindset in a way where it's like, I'm just going to hate on everything. Why is everything so bad and
Angsty
boring?
Harold.
Yeah, but despite feeling above most anything, when he does notice something out in the distance in this kingdom of Bunt, he sees one of what looks like his own statesmen of giants being held captive in like this pop-up circus in the middle of this kingdom.
Yeah, and honestly, it does make sense how he would react, as he's always seen giants as the superior race. So seeing one of his own locked up like that, it angers him. It makes him mad. Like, you're going to use them as a sideshow attraction? That's wrong. This is a strong warrior.
Yeah, he's pissed. You can see the veins on his head just popping up at seeing this. And he does commend the courage it takes, but we see that he has no real respect to keep them from any sense of violence. As on the next page, we skip over the entire fight, as I'm sure it wasn't even a fight, and just see the devastation he left on the island
Yeah, no,
behind.
I'm sure he just walked in, tore shit up, and saved her. And, you know, he thinks that he just did a great service to her in freeing her. Like, yeah, you don't have to thank me. My name's Harold, you're welcome. Not how she's seeing it.
No, he even is like, you don't have to thank me, I am the king, it's just what I do. She responds to that by smacking him across the face and not giving any respect to his status or his name. And it's clearly the first time anyone has ever stood up to this man, because he is just shocked that that could even occur.
Yeah, and I mean, she keeps going at him too, like, turn the ship around, you're the worst, you need to apologize, reprimanding him for what he just did.
Harold does initially retaliate verbally to being commanded around, and I'm not even sure it's because he's a king. I think he genuinely doesn't respect the lives of these smaller beings enough that he thinks it's even worth it.
Yeah, I mean, he calls it a puny doll kingdom. He doesn't see them as really even people. They're just little toys.
Mm-hmm. And instead of physically knocking the sense into him this time, as we later learn her name, I believe we said it earlier in her introduction, is Ida, but she verbally knocks him down to size this time, where it's like, you really think you're so much better than everybody else just because you were born big?
Well, and she tells him, like, these people actually were treating me very well. They gave me a second chance at life, basically. They saved me from the brink of death. And yeah, knocks him down a peg, like, you lucked into this. You're not some great, holier-than-thou, perfect person. You just happened to get this status.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be the first time anyone's ever talked to him like that. He realized, like, wait, I just got lucky? This isn't something I earned?
Yeah, it breaks his brain a bit, where he just has to sit there and he's like, I was born lucky? Big? Like,
I was just born this way?
Yeah. She, in the matter of like 2 minutes of knowing him, has changed his entire worldview, and to the point where he does let her go back and help them rebuild this nation, and even kind of feels bad enough that when his own men are like, alright, so we gonna get out of here? He's like, no, we're gonna help them rebuild, obviously.
Yeah, and yells at them like, no, you help them too. We're gonna remake this little model city. Kind of makes it into a game for him, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, he's still like very brash about it, but he is now very much has like the gears turning in his head for the first time.
Well, I mean, they start learning stuff from him, like, oh, you guys have different architecture, you have different food, you know, humans do things differently. And starts to open his eyes, like, oh, these are actual, like, real beings that have their own agency and, like, sentience.
Mm-hmm. And abilities we giants don't have. They're very good with their hands. They're good with textiles. Like, this is not something we even have thought about being able to do. And you can see that because of this, he starts even humbling himself. He bows to the other king on this island, and he starts letting people climb on him and explore him too. It's like, it only took this one instance of kind of just opening his eyes and not destroying something to see that it could be more.
Yeah, both of us saw this immediately when we read it. It's very much like Oden, where he met Toki and completely changed who he was. He initially was not a great guy, but then he started to open his mind and see the world through a different lens.
And we have a sequence where, just like Oden and Toki travel together on Roger's crew, Harold brings Ida with him on that giant ship. They go see other lands. He goes and they go fishing together. They talk about philosophy and all these other things.
Yeah, instead of just going into all these lands and decimating them, he learns from them. He starts to meet them and, you know, get to know them. And it has a profound influence on him.
Mm-hmm. we do see that there are some detractors. I mean, some on his own crew are even saying, like, oh, it's only a phase. Like, it's just, like, love-struck eyes. He's gonna see it differently eventually. But they couldn't be more wrong, as on that same page, we see him return to Elbaf and pronouncing a very different message than what he had left with.
Yeah, same. We've done a lot of wrong. We've hurt a lot of people, and we need to atone for that. We need to start making amends for all of the pain that we've caused.
And it is an interesting visual. Like, this king is just speaking to a crowd of people looking back at him, very emboldened, and is in an entirely different way than what he was when he left.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, like, he's always been just a brash, violent, like, go in, ask no questions, and now suddenly he's talking to them like, hey, we can't be like that. We need to do better. We need to make people feel that we care.
Mm-hmm. He does help his case that they were like, well, Dory and Broggy are still going to keep pillaging, and he's like, they already liked humans.
He's like, I know Dory and Broggy, like, they don't treat people like that. They get along with everyone. They're just goons.
But it seems like even like the older generations with Zoro and Ja Rule, while there's some detractors, there's nobody that seems directly opposed to standing in his way as long as they can still hold on to a lot of their warrior ideals.
Yeah, he's not telling them they can't still be warriors. They just can't be ruthless and heartless about it. They just have to think about their actions.
Mm-hmm. And as a result of this, it seems like over the next couple years in time, they are, with Ida's help, able to usher in a lot more diplomatic reform to this nation, where he's like, we could exchange different people, and they're like, oh, like a hostage? No, sorry.
Not like that. Oh, and it is like Oden, where they start to open up to the people of the world and not be such a closed-off nation as they once were.
Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, despite all of the accomplishments and progress they make, even in like one of the happiest moments where Ida and Harold bring their first child into this world, the very conservative ideals of this nation rear their ugly head without even a form or face to give it.
Yeah, we just see this shadowy council basically say, that's not a true king. He's from a mother who wasn't from here. He's not a true child of Elbaf. Mm-hmm. So he can't inherit the throne.
Yeah, didn't even let Hajrudin exist for more than a day before they delegitimized him. But luckily, there are some, just like before, some actual people open to listening to progress.
Right, and he's still going to be welcome there. They're not going to throw him out of the kingdom.
He still has a home.
But they're just not going to let him take power.
But as a result of this, those same shadowy figures do usher in what they seem as a proper and fit queen for him, where it's like a much more stereotypical, I'd say, standard of beauty that we see in the story, because Ida is drawn in a very different style than Estrid, as they introduced here, who is like an ancient giant, pure-blooded giant herself.
Yeah, very standard, tall, blonde, beautiful, and yeah, I don't like her. Like, right away, she just kind of has that look of like, there's more going on. Like, she's not there for love, she's there for the power. Mm-hmm. And she's taking advantage of it.
Yeah, the only thing she says is like, oh, I can't wait to love you forever, and then turns right around without even letting anyone else get a word in to start ordering people around. The servants need to move this here, we need to start dining on this, we need to start...
Yeah, literally says we're going to be eating off silver platters. Like, come on.
Yeah, she fully takes over the conversation, and while she does present like a nice dowry gift of this 8-legged horse of good fortune, it's again that she does something kind of nice up front and then follows it up by being like, oh yeah, we do need to start dining on silver platters. I need all the jewelry moved to my room.
I'll take all the jewels and gold. He just needs to focus on like the earth and the wind. What? Yeah, okay. You just want all the shiny things for yourself.
She very much reminds me of what a celestial dragon acts like.
And like one of the guards even says, isn't that just self-indulgence? Like, and he's right. That's what it is.
But she thinks she deserves it, and so she's trying to get Harold to act that same way.
And it definitely seems like you said, celestial dragon. She seems to have that like government mindset.
Yeah. Well, it is also weird like that she just kind of showed up perfectly fit to what they needed. You could look further into that, whether or not the world government and anybody else in that shadowy group like put her there for a purpose. But for now, all we know is that she's very much different than Ida.
Yeah.
But despite even this new influence, Harald does remain committed to his mission. He wants to keep opening up. He wants to keep this era of learning going, and every time he goes out to teach something new to a new nation, he also brings something back to teach his people.
Yeah, and it's really cool that he got to meet the fishmen, and it was right around the time that Neptune was born. That's a cool, like, connection there, is that he actually saw him as a youngling.
Yeah, and now their children are very likely going to usher in a new era of this world. But also, while he is away on one of these excursions, they do cut away and jump forward in time to the time that Estrid and Harald welcomed their child into the world, being the birth of Loki. And it's just everything Estrid never thought it would be. As she looks down at her child, and instead of seeing a soft features of a baby, she does see the horns of his father, but she also sees these dark irises and slitted eyes that look like a reptile or a demon.
He is a creepy looking baby. Like, how she reacts is not okay, though. Like, yeah, he might look a little creepy. That's also a purebred giant.
No, she has nothing that she wants to do with him. Well, like, even like the doctors are like, ma'am, it's fine. He's healthy.
Yeah,
he's
it's
cool.
a healthy baby. Like, it's fine.
No, she immediately rejects him.
And saying tell them it was a stillbirth, that's crazy. Saying, no, I didn't have a kid. This is not my son. And then saying, I don't want to have another one. Like, this has ruined childbirth for me. That's insane. Just because you don't like how your baby looks?
She might easily be the worst mother in the entire story.
Her Big Mom. But yeah, even Big Mom, like, waited till her kids were grown up before she killed them. She, like, newborn baby throws him off, like, the highest cliff in the story.
Yeah. He's just a baby. He's reaching out his hands for his mother, and she responds by taking them and hurling him off the Sun Realm to the realm of the dead. This is the same height we were worried Gaban was gonna die from falling from, and she threw a newborn child off of that.
Yeah, and I mean, understandably, everyone who saw this is just blown away at what a heartless person she is. And then, somehow, some way, he claws his way back up from the realm of the dead.
Yeah, and what is truly one of the most disturbing images I can remember reading in this story, we see a bloody, bruised infant child trying to climb desperately back to its mother that just threw it away. And it's really heartbreaking that not even for a minute did he get his motherly love.
No, at all. And I mean, if anyone loved him, it was actually Hajrudin's mom. You know, and he didn't even want to do anything with him. Like, that's not really my brother. Like, it's from a different mom. But she's telling him, like, that's still your brother. That's still family.
No, literally everybody else. Harald comes around, but he has his own frustrations. It seems like literally every problem from here on out is literally just scapegoated onto Loki when he had done nothing but just come into this world.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense why he is the way he is.
Yeah.
If he's always, like, from birth been treated like that.
No, I mean, not only does it explain why he covers his eyes, because it's probably the only way he was ever treated the same after this, but he really never had anybody give him a fair chance. Like, we have a lot of sad backstories in this story, but even people have low moments.
Oda's always got another one. Yeah, his entire life's been a low moment. He's always been the blame. It's always been his fault. He's always been the problem.
I mean,
from
like,
birth.
Sanji got Zeph, Nami had Belmare, and people later in her life. He really hasn't had anybody aside from Mosa, who, honestly, after, like you said, the only other person we've seen give him any semblance of acceptance is Ida. So I would be very shocked if Mosa turned out to be anybody but Hajrudin's mother.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't know what's happened to her. Maybe we'll see that in the coming flashbacks. It's hard to tell, but for now, I think that is the best bet, is that Mosa and Ida are one. And it's just like a code name or something.
Yeah, it would also help make them really feel more like brothers, where it's like we were raised by the same woman, essentially. But we're gonna have to wait to find out more. Let us know what you think about Loki's tragic past and what else we might learn about his childhood in the comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe for continued One Piece content like this in the future, and as always, be crew.